It's an issue in homes all across the world, and it's a secret shame for a lot of men and women. Domestic violence is a tough topic, and we are going to tackle it here today on The Positive Controversy. And I am joined with radio personality, legend to me, mom, businesswoman, Miss Melody Fox. Melody, thank you for being with me today.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for having me on A Positive Controversy. Thank you for addressing this so serious topic that we're going to delve into.
I appreciate you braving through this with me. Melody, how did you become a domestic violence advocate?
From being a victim, that it predates me actually making a difference for other women to actually being a teen victim of domestic violence by way of my first boyfriend. And it mushroomed from there to talking to other people about it. But as you so pointed, it is such a source of shame for so many.
How old were you, your first boyfriend?
Yes, 15 years old. Actually met him at a high school party. He was a couple of years my senior, so I was in high school. I was a sophomore at the time.
And what happened?
And this guy I met, he dances with me, and it's my first time. It's awkward. You're poking your behind out.
I mean,
and you're
you're young. You're in high school.
Exactly.
You're just getting to know yourself.
Exactly. I met him, and then later in the evening, I was dancing with another partner. But I felt this hand cuffing my neck. And I turn around and I see it was the guy that I met earlier, and he was whisking me away from the other gentleman.
What did you think was happening?
I was shocked. I really didn't have a lot of thoughts at the time other than like, whoa, like what's happening? But at the same time, I'm young and foolishly, it was almost endearing. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, he's been thinking about me all night. He just, and then he spoke so calmly. Babe, it was such a great time. He can call me baby. I'm like, oh, wow, baby. Oh, he called me baby.
You just don't even know this guy,
I don't know him at all.
So where did he go from this party?
Later on, did get in contact with him. He went to a local high school that wasn't far from where I lived. And we began talking. He was a musician, so he'd come and serenade me, play the saxophone, and just...
Real charming.
Real charming, absolutely. And then certain things started to happen when we would go out. Someone would talk to me, and he would say, what are you doing smiling at that grocery store clerk? And I'm like, I said, thank you for bagging my groceries. Thank you, have a nice day.
Just being courteous.
Just being courteous. And so that was a marker, him trying to thwart my socialization. And again, I'm a teenager, so me talking to other people, friends, he's abruptly ended conversations. Like, oh, wait a minute, she's busy, she's with me. So I started, to see those things. And, I pulled back a bit. But again, he was there, persistent, charming. We weren't physically engaged at that point. I was a virgin. He stayed the course. He would continue to woo me and charm me. And then I had friends say, wait a minute, it's a little bit something going on with this guy. He's a little extra,
When did it ever cross the line?
It crossed...
I mean, it sounds like it has, but when did it cross over to you knowing I'm being abused?
It started with physical isolation. Before he actually started hitting me, maybe I wanted to get out of being in a conversation with him or take myself to another location. He would abruptly, be like, you're not going anywhere. Like I couldn't push past him, or even if I was at my own place, he would stand in the way. And I said, what are you doing? Let me move. And then I said, no, this
isn't right.
It isn't, it isn't right. And eventually we did consummate later on. He stayed around. We were together for probably a year or so. Wow. And because I was so isolated, I wasn't having a normal teenage life. So even though I saw those early signs, I wasn't interacting with other young men and boys because
you were isolated.
Yeah. Everywhere I turned, there he was.
So he put his hands on you at a point.
When I got pregnant is when he first started putting his hands on me. He actually, started to be physically aggressive, grab my arms really tightly, pull me. That's where it started.
What were the after effects of being abused by this boyfriend?
So many after effects, because for a while, I would always think, if I was out because it was so involved, the physical abuse and isolation and just aggression. I would think that I would see him because sometimes he would pop up in places, where I was. So in addition to being, an abuser, was part stalking, and stalking is another facet of abuse. And so I would think that I would see him. So I would always look, and I would see shadows, and I would think, it would be that fear.
Like a fright.
It certainly was. And the last episode that So the last episode where there was, actual physical abuse, I was 9 months pregnant. And so he dragged me down a flight of stairs. Come on, you're gonna go with me, and I'm literally, I'm pregnant. I'm vulnerable because I'm in this state. I'm a new mom, I'm a teenager, I'm young. And, even though I did, consummate with him, I came up with a traditional, outlook. You don't have sex before you're married. So, and my mind was even though this guy's doing all this crazy stuff, I'm gonna just be with him and we're gonna work it out. He's gonna get better. He's gotta learn how to manage his behavior and just act better, and then we can work it out. But I'll be with him, we'll raise our family and all those things like that. It was completely delusional. And I remember after that happened, after being at the bottom of the stairs, I'm you know what? It was the final straw for me, because I'm I literally could lose my child right now.
Right.
Which at that time, my life was nothing like the ideal. I grew up watching The Cosby Show. I grew up watching these family, shows and seeing families in my community that I was able to, that were surrogate families for me, that I was able to be a part of.
So Melody, with all of that, how do you end up in an abusive relationship?
Like so many other women, it doesn't discriminate. There's so many women that you walk by that you wouldn't even know that they were in domestically abusive relationships. I'm talking about professional women, career women, women that are in high esteem and in different positions in life, but still are suffering with this silently because I didn't have an answer. It was something that was, happening. And, my human instinct was, how can we make this better? How can I help? Which is a great trait to have, but it's not one that warrants it being imposed on every situation. That may be reserved in some of the work that I do now with, how can I help some of these other women that are dealing with this issue, not how can I help a man that is abusing me.
So how did you finally get away from him?
After that incident of being, going down those flight of stairs, being drugged down those flight of stairs, I said, that's it. So I literally found a place. I found friends that were willing to help me, get my own place and to kind of be a security for me. So I had a girlfriend from grammar school who had a boyfriend. He was a big, burly boyfriend. And he was like, nobody is coming here. You are safe here until it's time for you to go. Have your baby.
What is it that you do to advocate for domestic violence, to advocate against it now?
I talk to young women. Right now, I founded an organization called the New York Love Movement, which is an umbrella organization that encompasses other businesses and individuals that want to make a difference in the community. Because I realized there are many people already doing work on the ground.
Yeah.
So I created a hub to actually bring those people together. So one of the members is Jericho Road International, Jericho Road Inc., which they deal with domestic violence and outreach for women. So I'm there at events, I'm speaking.
Yeah.
For the New York Love Movement, I just started a sister talk, that I host with women in the shelter, because there's a shelter that the New York Love Movement has adopted in Brooklyn, a family shelter that's mostly comprised of young women that are former victims of domestic violence.
Wow.
So there's no type. There's no type. You can speak to a woman and say, wow, you have so much sense. How does this
happen to you? And I can't look at you and say, oh yeah, she was abused. She's been in a domestic violence situation. I can't look at a woman and say that. Absolutely.
But there needs to be more transparency. There needs to be conversation. So that's why I appreciate you, Kristen. I appreciate the positive controversy, because you need to take on topics like this and have real discussions, not talk on the surface of issues, but really go into issues and get to the humanity and the dynamics, because again, this is happening, all the
all
time.
over and behind closed doors.
And we need to talk about it.
Well, stay with us. We're going to have our panel join us to continue this conversation and talk about ways that we can help be a solution and help bring this issue to light so that more people aren't suffering in silence with it.
Absolutely.
Some might say, Kristen, there is nothing positive about talking about domestic violence, but I do believe there is some good that's going to come out of our conversation today. So Melody, thank you for coming back with us and joining the panel. We have Cheryl Donald now, who is joining us. She's a psychotherapist, and AJ Jackson, who's an activist and advocate against domestic violence. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Cheryl, how did you get into this practice?
Well, as a licensed marriage and family therapist, obviously domestic violence really impacts on individuals as well as families. And so that's a major emphasis of my practice, is to help people address what's going on in their lives, how to deal with it, and how to move forward from it.
AJ, how about you? How did you come to domestic violence as an activist and advocate?
I became an activist much later in life. I actually grew up in a home where I was experienced my mom in an abusive relationship, in a domestic violence situation, and it wasn't until maybe about 2 years ago, when a young woman in our town, in our community, was murdered by her boyfriend, that I really began to get more involved and wanted to kind of see how I could help out from a legislative perspective. And so I formed my company and began writing things to kind of get involved.
Tell me about this legislative movement that you have, about the work that you've done.
It's called the Healthy Alliance Joint Venture, and I wrote it about a year and a half ago with some colleagues of mine. And the resolution, what it does is it calls on our Board of Education to adopt a teen dating violence curriculum starting out from grades 8 through 12. We ultimately believe that the issue is younger, but we feel for, pilot reasonings, we'll start out from grades 8 through 12. And then we're asking for our city council to launch a domestic violence task force to raise awareness in the school. So we want to take an educational approach with changing the culture with the young people, educating them proper ways of a healthy relationship. And we also want to let people know in the community about programs, services, money, just even if you just need someone to talk to. In a case like with Cheryl, and we want to let them know that there are people out here helping will help you and are there for you.
Wow. And it means a lot to have the community rise up and tackle this issue. I feel like you don't see enough of that, the community getting involved. And I love that you're starting young. When we talked to Melody earlier, it happened to her at a very young age. Melody, what is the benefit of starting, would you say, young like that?
It's important because, again, giving them that education and giving them some type of template, because we were discussing that sometimes these children coming up nowadays, they have another template that they're working with. They have an idea, there's a normalization that's taking place of some of these violent situations. So for them, it's what it is, to see, like, you grew up in a domestic violence household. I couldn't look at you and profile you as someone that is, you don't appear to show any signs of abuse. So what is that? So again, I think it is critical to talk about what healthy relationships look like and let these young people formulate some of their own identity and idea about what a relationship
healthy relationship should look like. AJ, how did that impact you in your life, seeing that so young?
I think it taught me compassion. I think that it made me stronger. It didn't victimize me in any way. It didn't make me, go, woe is me. It made me want to be strong. It made me want to be stronger, to be able to protect my family, of course, but also to be compassionate and to kind of be understanding. So coming up, the idea of putting my hands on a woman was just something that I could never do because I saw what happened to my mother. So whereas it was probably a negative to see it, years later, it was a positive because it allowed me to understand, the danger of domestic violence, of intimate partner violence. There's ways to use our words and to talk. And I've been in situations with women where I've been hit, and I've had to be like, oh, but you have to walk away. My experiences have allowed me to learn how to deal with those situations. But unfortunately, majority of the young people that are growing up today in urban communities, if I'm correct, maybe about 65% of the homes are just single parents. So a lot of children are not in a situation to see a healthy, mom, dad, married family, that whole nucleus that's so important to us. A lot of children in communities, they don't have opportunity to even see that. So all they know maybe is my mom fighting her boyfriend here or my dad fighting his girlfriend there. I mean, each situation is different, but I imagine that it's something that needs to be addressed. No child should live through what I lived through. And even though I was able to turn it around for me, that's not everyone else's story.
And that's why you're starting young. And Cheryl, as someone who deals with the family, how much of this is going on behind closed doors that, people don't know about? People live in a lot of shame.
I think people live in bubbles, and there's a certain level of embarrassment if we feel that our families are not operating in a way that we believe society thinks that they should be operating. And a lot of times we also feel that we are the only ones who are going through something. And so if I were to share what's happening in my family, maybe my friends or colleagues would not know or not understand, right? Yeah. And so we keep that close to the cuff, and we deal with it on our own, and we don't feel like there's anyone who would understand or another place for us to discuss it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can be completely honest. I had quite the temper early in my marriage, really quite the temper that I didn't even know was there. I mean, I would go from levels of like 0 to like real high, and I went to counseling. I did. I went to counseling to kind of work out whatever was making me, blow my lid, whatever was happening there. But I didn't want to pass that down to a child. I didn't want a child to see that, to see me, just completely, letting my temper control me instead of me controlling my own behavior. I didn't want to continue to subject my spouse to that, to feeling like, if I say something, she's going to fly off the handle, But the way that you deal with that is you go get help. You go talk to someone. You confront it. You be honest.
And what you're talking about is that you identified an area of concern for you personally, and you sought assistance to deal with that. And what we're talking about is different tools to communicate. And oftentimes in domestic violence situations, people just don't know how to communicate their feelings. They don't know how to identify what's going on. And so it all comes out as anger. But we're not always angry. We can't just have one emotion, right? So what we call anger could actually be frustration. It could be sadness. It could be hurt. It could be fear. It could be a lot of things. It could be stress. And so if we don't have those tools to figure out different ways to communicate with our loved ones, with our families, then it comes out in those negative ways that can ultimately be hurtful and even deadly.
But I think that intimacy plays a major part in this whole thing, because the danger of domestic violence is that no one wants to talk. Because how many times have you gotten into an argument with your significant other and then it's just been whatever, and you go back and break up to make up, and we love and it's okay. Right. And so a lot of times people in relationships, they love these people. It's difficult to go out there and tell that Charles has been beating me for 3 months. I love Charles. I love Charles. Charles is the father of my children. I don't love Charles, but I love Charles. I'm having a daughter, by the way.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's Charles. No, but I'm just saying, she loves the woman she loves Charles.
That's
so
right.
It's personal. And so when you talk about domestic violence, intimate partner violence, there's so many. That's why talking about, like you said, it's so uncomfortable, because someone that you love may be doing something that's wrong. And we understand that that's not love, but when you're in it,
it feels like love.
So AJ, that to me is to your point about compassion. You love someone, but you're compassionate still to them. You don't hate someone because they hurt you. Not necessarily. You still want to find a way to work it out. What about the provoking? It's not one-sided. This is a slippery slope.
it is.
This is a slippery slope right here. But there is, we have seen women provoke men.
Yes. I've been spacked. So a female didn't like what I said. And we were just in a car. I was driving, not paying attention, And next thing I know, I thought my mama was in the car. You know, like it was one of those smacks.
Okay,
It was one of,
yeah.
you know, your mama hit you, you
Yeah.
go, whoa, I got to get my. It was literally one of those. I'm no longer with that person, of course. We're no longer together. Those things because you can't continue to be. But you know, being a man on that side, I've been there as well too. It's not just. I've noticed that the more we go, I feel that women, because they've been so victimized for a long time by men, that I think that what's happening is with some women, especially the younger girls, they're being more assertive and more aggressive. Before you even think that you can hurt me, I'm going to be all over you.
But we're going back to power and control, right? And if I'm instigating something, am I demonstrating that I have power in this moment, right? If I don't have power anywhere else in my life, I have power right here. And that's where I'll exert it.
So one of the things that we do, the last thing we do before we go is a speed round. I give you guys a word or a phrase, and you guys tell me the first thing that comes to your mind until I say stop. You guys ready?
Yes.
Are we gonna get a toaster or something after this? Like a positive controversy?
Positive controversy. That's all this is about, right? Okay. So my word for you all is love.
Compassion.
Patience.
Strong, passionate, dangerous, fulfilling.
Long suffering.
Connected.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of this conversation, for being honest, for being transparent, for sharing your stories, for sharing solutions and ways that we can create a safe space for people to talk about domestic violence, to air out some of it, even our own dirty laundry, and to help people deal with this tough issue that is domestic violence.
Could never tell what's on a man's mind. And if he's from Brooklyn, ain't no use in even trying to change his ways. The image he portrays, man, is a gift from God, you know, no two are made the same. So tell him you love him, tell him you trust him, and he'll love you just the same. We'll keep fighting for and striving towards